Hello and welcome back to the Pink Podcast. Today's episode is maybe going to be my favorite episode ever. I'm not sure yet. We'll see. But it is about one of my favorite topics ever and one that I think is very important and maybe even missing out of a lot of conversations that we need to be having nowadays, which is feminine energy and how we have kind of lost our touch with our own femininity. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because a couple of months ago, I went down a journey of what my feminine energy was, what is like divine feminine energy, and how, as women, we have kind of lost our connection to our feminine energy and how we used to be. And once I kind of started doing some more digging and learning, I kind of really discovered that I was very in my masculine energy. So let's talk about all this from the beginning. I know some of you might be lost, some of you may already kind of have some knowledge and concepts of what feminine energy is, but it is kind of self-explanatory. We as women, we have a lot of feminine energy and men have a lot of masculine energy. And obviously we still carry some masculine energy as women and men carry some feminine energy as men, and there's supposed to be like a healthy balance. But of course, if you're a woman, you're supposed to have more feminine energy than masculine, and vice versa if you're a man. It's kind of like when you imagine the picture of yin and yang, how it's like black and white, yet in the white, there's still like a little bit of black, and in the black, there's still a little bit of white. And I always think about that when I think about feminine and masculine energy. It's good to remember that we go together, that it's a beautiful polarity and we need each other to thrive, and that we still have a little bit of one another, and that that's important. Okay. Now, feminine energy in its essence, it's very soft and it's beautiful and it's happy and it's safe and it feels just protected and womanly and happy and just probably pink and colorful. You know what I'm saying? Like whenever you just imagine yourself as a woman and you just have all these happy thoughts, that's like that feminine essence. It radiates, it's gorgeous, it makes you feel good, it's motherly and protective and protected, and it's just perfect because obviously we're girls. Okay, I'm just kidding. But that's a little bit about feminine energy. It's self-explanatory, and same thing for like masculine energy. Masculine energy is self-explanatory. It's a little bit more on the strong side and it carries more of that protectiveness and providing, and it's a little bit more confrontational, a little bit more violent, but in a good way, like in a keep your tribe and your people safe. And it's just strong and I don't know. I'm not a man, so I don't really possess all the qualities to probably get excited while talking about it. But, whenever you think about your boyfriend or like a man and you're like, wow, like I really love these qualities about men, those are like the things that masculine energy should have, like that protectiveness, that like, wow, like he's, such a man. So I know it's not a great description, but you get the picture. So that's like feminine and masculine energy. And in a society, we are supposed to obviously be able to remain in our own energy, and that helps each other thrive. Now, what has happened throughout the years is that women, we have been kind of forced to be more in our masculine. And I think a lot of this can be blamed, honestly, on our government for many reasons. So, one, and I think this is probably the most obvious one, and one that a lot of us women have probably already contemplated, is the fact that we have to work. And not that just we have to work and work itself, but the fact that we are expected to work in the same fashion and in the same like capacity as a man. And we are not men, we are women. And as women, we have different needs, we have different capacities. And I believe that the way that we have been expected to show up as equals has really affected our feminine energy and overall, like our health as women. This is what I mean. Let me break this down a little bit more. I've talked about this in an episode with Ashley, and I don't know if I've talked about it since, but if you think about women, right? Women, we by nature, like so naturally, I'm not saying like the exception, somebody who might train harder or somebody who's like the exception to the rule. There are exceptions. We could get that out the way. But naturally and commonly and you know what I'm saying? Like the obvious is that we are not as strong as men, which is fine. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. We're not as like physically naturally strong as men. We can build our way there, but if we're just talking about like through puberty, men are always like stronger than women, even if none of us have training. And if you're just thinking about the basic concepts, like he's stronger, he probably has a little bit more endurance. Like if you ask a man to carry a 75-pound rock up a hill, right? Let's see how far he can go. And naturally, if you ask a woman how, like, to do the same thing, and these aren't like people who, let's get the exceptions out the way. I don't want to keep like excusing myself, but I just don't want to like think about somebody in the comments being like, well, like women do this all the time, like women who train. I'm not talking about the women who train. I'm just talking about like the natural version of ourselves. We are physically weaker, and that's totally fine. It's fine, guys. But if we were asked to both carry a 75-pound rock up a hill, women, we would probably get tired faster, which again is normal. So this kind of puts into perspective the fact that men by nature are more strong. They have a bigger endurance with work and things that are physically taxing. And I believe that where we went wrong as women and as a society is that when women started entering the workforce, we were just trying to do the same job that was available, the jobs that were there and already created. And these jobs were created around the capacity of a man, right? Because men were always working and women were traditionally, back in the day, more of us stay at home figures and they stayed at home with the kids. And for a long time, women weren't even allowed to work. So this definitely lets you know that these jobs were centered, created, and kind of designed around a man's capacity, which was fine because it was designed for men. And so when we women decided, okay, we need to go to work for whatever the reason was, maybe the family needed more money, maybe the father passed away, whatever the scenario is, when women started to enter the workforce, we started kind of doing a lot of the same jobs that were there for men. Apart from like the jobs that were more catered towards women, the other jobs that women were filling in factories and in work lines and stuff like that were those jobs that were created for men. And we never really were able to advocate for the fact that we are not obviously built the same. We don't have the same body type or bone structure or any of the things that these men possess that allow them to perform this job at this level. And not only just the daily task of that work, however long that shift is, and whatever the work itself is, whether that's like designed for a man or not, then there's also the layer of our periods. And this is something that's really serious. I know in society we kind of don't really talk about our periods that much, and we kind of whisper around when we have to like change our pad or like we need a tampon or something like that happens, and we have kind of been socially adapted to not embrace our periods, which is so natural and human and such a beautiful part of our like nature. And you would think that it would be a lot more normal and not taboo or weird to just talk about it openly with each other and with the opposite sex. Like, I don't understand why it's such a weird thing, but it is. And I believe that that kind of also translated into the workforce because women were never just given time off during their periods, at least not like in American culture. I know that overseas and in other countries, especially in Europe, there are different expectations for women, and they can get some time off when they obviously are pregnant and when they're giving birth and postpartum, etc. And they have parental leave now, so they also allow men to do that while getting paid. And that culture is a lot more developed and respected in other parts of the world. But here in the United States, the conversation about women having their periods and the fact that we shouldn't be expected to perform even at our own best, not even the fact of a man's equal counterpart, like we are on our periods, we're bleeding, we are cramping, we are going through some physical changes. We wouldn't expect anybody else to be working while bleeding. Like if a man, I don't know, hurt his nose the day before and he was gushing blood out of his nose for the entire day at his job, they would send him home. They would be like, "Hey buddy, I think it would be best if you just go home." Like you wouldn't just expect a man to like have a nose pad on or something and work all day through his nose gushing and his head hurting from him bleeding out his nose. Yet, us women, we are expected to show up to our jobs and to not call out, to not have any. accommodations for the fact that we are bleeding out of our vagina for several days of the month. And that is really crazy and extremely absurd that these natural things that happen to us women monthly don't get accommodated or respected or um, just taken into account when it comes to our work. So that's part one. It's our period, right? Part two is something that I already kind of touched on, which is when we're pregnant and post like partum, like after you give birth. Um, there should logically be paid time off for women. I mean, if you're pregnant, why should you be expected to show up? And also, you shouldn't be fired. Like, it should just be part of our government and our laws to protect women during these natural times that we aren't basically meant to be working. Like, these are times where we're meant to be either like getting rid of old ovaries that didn't get used, that need to get out of our body, or if you're pregnant, I mean, you're creating a life, you're in there cooking up a human. Like, that's so time consuming, energy draining. I mean, it's literally a job. You're creating a human. Like, I can't even imagine of a job that might be harder than with your own body creating human life. And to put another job on top of that is insane and bonkers. And I know that we as women a lot of times still have to go to work because if not, the bills aren't going to get paid. And it's like, I mean, now you have to take care of this baby. You better save up and you better have your finances ready. And it's not really our fault that we must, but it's it's socially expected of us to show up still even when we're pregnant and to give birth and be right back to work a couple weeks after. Giving birth is not like getting a surgery, and getting surgery requires time off. It's not going and getting your wisdom teeth taken out. It is pushing a living baby out of you, or if you have a C-section, whatever the case may be, having a human come out of you, okay? And after that, you have to take care of this human 24/7. You are basically their primary caretaker. Obviously, even if you have a partner, I hope you do, just for the sake of balance, but even when you do, that baby still has a different bond with mom. Mom and baby are bonded like no other. And as much as dad comes in and relieves mom and helps out and does his duties, there's still a different expectation and work requirement for mom and baby. And that's completely okay. It's completely natural. We're meant to be like that because the men in nature are obviously supposed to be hunters and gatherers while we stay behind taking care of the babies and making sure everything's okay. And so naturally, they're supposed to go and keep getting more meat and hunting, I don't know, a bear and bringing it back and having dinner and protecting the tribe. And while that's going on, mom and baby are supposed to be safe. And mom is taking care of this baby, mom is taking care of the home. And that is a job. And you can't just expect mothers to leave their babies right after birth, even if you can afford somebody taking care of it, even if you can, whatever. That's just not natural. And it's so sad that as a society, we have gotten to this point where we almost demand that of women. We demand that they lose that bond with the baby and that they just have to, like quit being a full time mom just because they can't afford to stay home. And that is why I believe that these times of our life as women should be accommodated in society, and it should be still like paid for, like paid time off. And it should be like the norm and not just like this big wish. And oh my God, it should just be the norm because it makes sense and it's fair. It's fair to the family unit, it's fair to the child, it's fair to the mom, and it's fair to society. I mean, in order for us to have healthy, happy, and the best versions of the next generation, we must be there to take care of it and grow it. And it's kind of like how people get sick days at their jobs, where it's like you get paid sick days. I mean, for like a good job, I know like not every job does that, but like if you have a good job, whatever, you get paid sick days. This should be like part of the construct of a job where women get paid days for their menstrual cycle and paid days for being a mother. Okay. And so that's that on like the work side of the government's influence on like how we are expected to show up to work and where I believe that we have gone wrong as a society. And the other part that I believe that the government has a huge influence on, and maybe this one isn't so much of a government, but overall just like a societal teachings and what the culture here is in America, where women are just not safe, where you just aren't safe. Physically, we are pretty much hunted and at fear all the time of being raped by a man, of being abused, of being kidnapped, of anything. We are terrified of men all the time, constantly. It is one of the most scary things is to be a woman and to be outside by yourself. I mean, we all know we're not supposed to go to the gas station by ourselves at nighttime or go on a walk or go on a jog at night or do anything like by yourself as a woman if it's not like plain daylight in the middle of everywhere. And even that is still scary. And there are other parts of the world, for example, like Dubai is one of the places where women are the most safe. And I'm not here to like kind of compare like the politics and this and that. I know there's like different things that go into different cultures, but there are parts of the world where women are protected socially and where we are praised and loved and protected and we are not hunted by men and where we can be a woman and go outside and not be terrified and just live without fear of any of these horrible things happening to us that are very very real here in America. And I mean, even when I was I believe I was 16 or 17, my mom and I were like at a Publix and we both believed that I was about to get like kidnapped and she like saved me. Thanks, mom. But it's like I was just at Publix. I was just grabbing something really quick. I think it was like 8 p.m. my sophomore year, no, junior year. And there was like these men in a van and we that's like a whole story time. But it's like, how does this even happen? You know, it's so common here. If it hasn't happened to you, you know somebody who's either been like raped or molested or abused or physically assaulted by a man. And this just isn't normal. And when we have women scared of men and of being outside and of just like the world, we are just not allowed to be in our feminine energy. So let's just get into what being in your feminine energy means. Being in your feminine energy means that you feel safe, you feel protected, you feel like you're allowed to be soft and gentle. And socially speaking, when we fear all the time a man doing something to us, or when we're going to work because we must provide, and now we're kind of fulfilling the role a little bit more of a masculine role, especially because these jobs aren't kind of catered or shaped around womanhood or designed in a way that we can show up and still be in our feminine. So, when we're doing all these things that are stripping us of our feminine energy, we are now being in our masculine. We're having to worry about protecting ourselves, which is something that's like a man's role is to like protect the tribe and protect the women and the kids. And we are now having to be our own protector. We are having to be our own provider. And I also feel bad for the men because I believe that us as women, while we have been pushed almost to be more masculine and having to protect ourselves and be our own masculine figure in a way, we have by reaction feminized the men and they don't feel as needed or like as respected, and they have lost a lot of that masculine urge to provide and to take care for women because we have went through this journey of like being our own provider and saying we don't need a man, we're so independent. And I think there's like obviously a healthy balance, and I think that that's what we're trying to find as women is how to be feminine while also not being abused. Because if you think back in the day, if let's say like 1900s and you live in this family and you're the woman of the house and your man goes out and he's the provider and you're a stay-at-home mom, and let's say your husband cheats on you or he abuses you or both, and now you want to leave. Now you're like, okay, I don't want to be with this man. I mean, he's not the man I fell in love with. He's abusive. He's harming me. He's taking me out of my feminine energy. And now, if you think all the way back then, women, if you couldn't work, if you didn't have respected roles, it's like, what are you gonna do? Where are you gonna where how are you gonna provide for your kids if you get a divorce? And it's like, what are you gonna do if you can't just marry another man? Like, we were so almost like oppressed in that form of freedom, while we did have the freedom to not work and the freedom to be in our feminine while being soft and being with our children and just taking care of the home. We were also suppressed in the sense that we had no option. We had no room to grow or to expand beyond that, because not everybody wants to be a stay at home mom. Not everybody wants to just be a caretaker for a family. Some women want to do that and also pursue things that make them happy as just a person. And I don't believe that women just don't need or don't find joy in working. I believe that a lot of us do find some sort of obviously like joy and fulfillment in doing a role that's designed for us and something that we love and is fulfilling. I just believe that it should be shaped better and molded into a job that's appropriate for a woman, and a job that won't strip us of our energy and our femininity, and that won't exploit us, because we aren't men and we shouldn't be expected to work like one. And so women back then, they didn't have the option. And so I feel like when women say now, like, oh, you don't want us to work, like now we're gonna go back to that. It's like it's not about going back to anything, and it's not about the extremes. It's about finding the happy middle where we are able to fulfill our roles and do what makes us happy, and also find a career that makes you happy if that's what you want to do, or be a stay-at-home mom. But now the other problem with being a stay-at-home mom is that the way that these corporations have reduced the wage for the same job, and the way that, the economy has fluctuated, where now things cost way more than they used to, yet the minimum wage, or the wages that are paid for the same job haven't really risen with, you know, at a parallel with the cost of living. And so even if a man, even if his desire and his passion was to be able to provide for his family, and maybe his wife wants to be a stay at home wife and take care of the kids, and he wants to be the full time provider. There are a lot of families that do have that desire and that just cannot fulfill that goal and that dream, because these jobs are no longer created with the same wages as they once were. And people get paid basically a lot less, because I get it, like they're technically getting paid more by the hour, but the way that the cost of goods and living has risen, it's not like, it's not adding up. The math just isn't there. And so a lot of these men are left with no other option but to have their wife also work. And what are you going to do? You have to take care of your family. And women, we are filling the roles of women and men, and these corporations don't really care about that stuff, and they're just, abusing the workforce and making everybody work at a non-livable wage. I mean, I think right now in America it's almost impossible to live as a one person unit. Like, if you have a regular job, let's say, even if you're a teacher, right, like a job that you have a degree and you have student loans, and if you had a house and a car, and you can't afford all these things as a one income family, like as a one income household anymore. Like, you must have two incomes, whether you have a roommate or a friend or a partner. It's impossible to pay for all these things with just one job. And that should let you know that we're kind of being like imprisoned by these jobs, and they just keep abusing and abusing the workforce more and more and more. And I think that that's why a lot of people are trying to find their own room in, like, being an entrepreneur or a side job, or starting their own business, because it's no longer doable for these families. But let's not get into like the wage part. I think obviously we understand that there are a lot of men and families that do wish to have this polarity where the mom could kind of take some time and focus on raising the kids, and we just can't, because of the obvious. It's just not economically doable right now. And that's definitely like a government's role, where they could change the minimum wage, or where they could put things to stop with the inflation and the interest on the loans, and the student loans, and the, oh my goodness, I don't want to even get my head wrapped around that, because it's going to turn into a different episode. But I believe that that's the way that the government can and should impose themselves into protecting women and families if it was in an ideal world where, you know, it would be a living wage. And even if you're just a mom, a single mom, and you don't have any help and you had a regular job, it would be enough for you to take care of your family. Or if you're a man, same thing, where it's enough for you to take care of your family with one income. And if we just took care a little bit better of people societally, everybody would be so much happier. But obviously, this is an extreme capitalist country. And well, with anything that's extreme, there are bad extremes. So let's leave it at that with the government's role in kind of how they're stripping away our femininity. And let's get into what we can do as women to get our power back and be more in our feminine, because I feel like a lot of us have been striving for it. I see a lot of content, and maybe it's because I'm biased and I feel this way, and obviously maybe I like interact or watch that content. But even aside from content, I feel like it has been a lot more in the conversations lately of women saying out loud to each other and on the internet how much we want to be in our feminine, and we want to just feel soft again and be able to explore our womanhood. And I know it might be hard because obviously right now we, let's say, like, you're just a girl and you're not at that point in your life. And even if these are your dreams and desires and where you want to be one day, we just might not be able to be there right now. And obviously, I think we kind of understand that the bigger solution to the big problem is going to take a little bit more than just us, sitting in the mirror and getting cute and feeling ourselves and doing a hair mask. I think it's a lot more of a government and socially constructed problem. And it's going to take, laws and social norms to change in order to accommodate womanhood into the social workforce and do it in an appropriate way where we still feel feminine and joyous while fulfilling our roles. And while these solutions may not just be right around the corner, and while they might take a couple years to come into life and just get integrated into society, there are things that we can do now in order to thrive in our femininity and kind of take some of that power back. And now that we kind of touched the workforce and how that affects us as women, I feel like it's fair to go into other things that aren't so government related and so far from maybe a fix, and things that we are in control of, that we have kind of let go our feminine powers in, and we have kind of emasculated ourselves in. And a lot of these things I realized when doing my own work. I definitely carry a lot of like masculine energy. And it's kind of celebrated while we're growing up, which is so funny. Like, socially we are told to be more independent and do it all yourself and girl boss and you don't need no man, and all these quotes that make you feel like it's good to almost be in your masculine energy. And there's nothing wrong with being independent and with getting things for yourself. But I think it's fair to admit to each other and to let go of that concept in a sense, because when you think of the yin and the yang, right? I get it, it's funny, but when you think of the yin and the yang, there is a beautiful polarity, and the masculine and the feminine energy thrive in companionship, and they shine with one another. And the white looks whiter next to the black, and the black looks blacker next to the white. And so when we kind of realize this, and we let go of this concept that we must be so independent. And the same thing for men when they say we don't need a woman and I can do all these things by myself. There's nothing wrong with knowing how to have new skills and not just do the skills or the roles that are kind of expected of your gender. But there's also no problem in knowing that there is a duality to life, and that there is a engraved partnership in our DNA and in our need for social bonds, and in just the way that our bodies crave a partnership and a balance and a polarity that comes with feminine and masculine energy. And we kind of have to learn how to dance with it a little bit better. I know that I lost a lot of my feminine energy while growing up. A lot of it was obviously socially, a lot of it was through my parents telling me to be strong and independent and to not ever need a man. And a lot of it was just through my peers and my culture and, what we see in movies and what we listen to in music. And you grow up and you kind of just start losing that beautiful feminine energy that you kind of hold more as a little kid, and things get more real for women as we're getting older, and it becomes like, okay, now you have to get a job after high school and kind of provide for yourself and figure your own things out and get your own money, and so you can buy makeup or, I don't know, do whatever the things that you like to do. So we kind of start embodying this masculine role from early on based on what we're told and who we're around. And I've really noticed within myself how controlling I am and how much I love conflict and being argumentative. And I have a lot of qualities that are per se like more masculine. And a lot of it came from me wanting to protect myself and me feeling like I needed to just be my own caretaker. And, I got grounded a lot growing up. And, you get told, be careful with boys and they're going to do this to you. And so you got to get put into like this worry mindset, and you start losing that sense of security and safety from such a early and young age. And then it just spirals. The more you grow, the more in danger you kind of become. And the more you're expected to work and the more you're expected to do all these other things. And it just keeps on and on, like stripping us of our femininity. And a lot of the things that I have been trying to do lately to kind of get that same power back that I used to have when I was younger is do things that fulfill my feminine energy. So whether that's taking the time to make myself feel pretty and, like cute in the mornings, and doing the things that just make me feel soft and girly and slowing down and trying to not be in such a rush mindset and not be so stressed and worried about things that aren't in my control, and just kind of relaxing and easing into my feminine energy and just doing things that make me feel womanly and cute. I can't keep saying cute, but I do things that do make me feel cute. And whether that's getting like a pink water bottle or getting your nails done or getting a cute outfit or putting on lip gloss in the morning, whatever these things are that make you feel truly soft and feminine, they really go such a long way. And the more I've started to do these things, the more I have noticed how many things I do that aren't putting me in my feminine, even just the way that I interact with my partner. I like to horseplay a lot, and I pick up on his lingo so much, and I kind of talk to him like how he talks, like so like a boy, and I'll use so much of his like slang and his like, like his boy terms. And it would be weird if he was just walking around the house, like, saying, like, the girliest stuff to me, like, if I was like, "Oh my god, like, that workout was so good," and he just comes out with, like, "Period." Like, it would be like, "Okay," like, that's kinda more for me to say, not saying, "Oh my god, that man can't say period," but you get what I'm saying, like, if he was just, like, copying my lingo all the time, if he was like, "Girl, like, you better work," like, it would be like, wait, you kind of like sound like a girl now. It would kind of, he would kind of lose like a lot of that sexiness that I find in his like masculine and in his like boy terms and in his like bro, like dog, whatever, like the boy terms, and the boy swag. And me, I love to like pick up on that lingo and to do it back to him. And then it just feels so not feminine. I feel like, okay, now I sound like him. So it's like, am I soft? Am I cute? Am I adorable and girly if I'm walking around punching him and talking to him like a boy? And so I'm realizing all these things that I do subconsciously that kind of put me in my masculine. It's not just like obviously like the lingo and um the fact that I go around like horse playing with him, but also like the music that I listen to or the way that I react if somebody like makes me mad in public. Like I kind of like go into like defending myself and like being so masculine about it. And it's like, I'm not gonna fight that man that just cut me off in line. So why am I like, acting so masculine? Like if I can just fight my way through it? I don't know. Like I feel like as women, we have kind of become so used to like getting into our masculine so fast. And once you really start noticing how much we do it and how often we just like lose touch with our softness, then you're kind of gonna become obsessed with like, okay, let me try to stay in my feminine. And it's a little hard. It's extremely hard actually. I am so much more aware of all the ways in which I have kind of developed masculine traits and habits, and yet I still continue to do them. And for example, like, this is so bad. Maybe I shouldn't say this on here. This is so embarrassing. But like my boyfriend, he says like word, right? Like if he's like asking, does he even say it? I think he does. I think he said it maybe a couple times. I don't know. But you know how like boys will be like, word? As in like for real. And that's so like boyish. And now he'll tell me something completely random. Like he'll say like we're out of almond butter and I'll be like, word. And it's like, ew. Like why am I saying word to we're out of almond butter? Like where's like the cuteness and the softness? And I'm not saying that like obviously you can't joke around and like have like, your little like moments where you're like sharing lingo. Like I'm not talking about like the extreme, but I'm saying like regularly I have been guilty of just copying like the way he talks, and like I'll put on like these big tees. There's nothing wrong with a big tee. I love wearing a big tee to sleep like after I shower or whatever. But then it's like, oh, why can't I just like wear some cute pajamas and feel like cute and dainty? But whatever. There's like all these ways in which we have kind of lost our feminine power and our like essence, and we don't even really realize it because we're so used to doing it. And don't get mad. There's nothing wrong with a big T, but you get what I'm saying. Like there's just all these avenues in which we're usually just embodying more masculine traits. And I feel like as women, we are so much happier when we get to be in our feminine and be soft and be happy and protected and safe and thriving in our womanhood. And I hope that we all can kind of go through a journey and learn what those things are for ourselves, and that hopefully soon in society we start to see turns in how women get treated in the workforce, and how we get treated, outside at nighttime, at the gas station, and that we just get respected more and loved and valued because we are perfect princesses and we should be treated as such, okay? And I think I'm going to leave it at that. I have so much more to say on this topic, obviously, but I feel like this is like a good point to leave it. Maybe one day I'll do a full episode as to all the ways in which all the things that I kind of recognize myself being super masculine in, and the journey that I've went through and the things that I have done to try to better myself in those areas and bring some of that womanly, feminine, divine energy back into myself. But for today, I'm just gonna leave it at that. I hope that you girls love this episode. Or for anyone watching, I hope that you learned something and kind of got a little bit more perspective as to why protecting our feminine energy is so essential and important to a thriving and happy society, because we are half of the society, okay? And we deserve to be happy and to be loved and respected. And I love you girls, and I'll see you girls next week. Stay in your divine feminine, okay? Think about cute stuff every morning and put on some lip gloss or chapstick, whatever, and think of me. I love you girls. I'll see you all next Wednesday. Bye.